Well, good morning. Happy Monday. Happy summer. Now, Jody and Dennis, the calendar doesn't say summer, but after last weekend, it's summer. Wouldn't you agree?
It's summer, for sure.
It sure is. Along with me, Jody Pollock Newsom and Dennis Pennington. We're talking wheat today, and we're talking about a virtual field day that's going to be happening this coming Wednesday. First of all, Jody, you always put a lot of work into these virtual events, and you always put a lot of work into the field days, like in the past. This year, you had to do a lot of work just to get this up and running. A lot of different things have happened since you originally started to plan this, isn't it?
It really is. I think one of the toughest has been what was going to happen with COVID and were we virtual or were we in person? And it's so tough because that decision had to be made so long ago because it's a Michigan State. So if we were going to go in person, we have to deal with their protocols and their rules. And we also needed to let people know and getting the postcards printed and stuff. It's a lot longer process than just starting a couple weeks before. So pretty much as soon as we were done with the Wheat Wisdom webinars, the next week we started working on the field day. So I think things have come together really well. Most of us have done virtual events at this point, so we are set and ready. But I think I can speak for Dennis too and the board. We still are disappointed that we weren't able to do it in person and to see everyone. But I am planning full speed ahead for winter, for the annual meeting, to be in person. So this is still going to be great. We're still going to have the researchers went out to the fields. They did videos. They took pictures. So the good news is when it's 90 degrees on Wednesday, you don't have to be in the field. You can sit in your air-conditioned house and you can be part of the field day.
And air-conditioned comfort in the morning, right, Dennis?
Yeah, because it's going to get humid too. So you add the humidity and the heat, and that gets a little bit uncomfortable out in the field.
How many days of shooting did you guys put together for this, Dennis?
Each researcher kind of did their own thing, so it wasn't more, just a few hours out in the field shooting. So it wasn't too bad to collect the video, and then we just gotta get the video edited and prepared, ready for the field day. So, and not everybody's doing video. Some are going to be doing just the standard PowerPoint presentations. So, yeah, it'll be a kind of a mixture of different presentations.
As far as the different presentations, how many different ones are we looking at right now, folks?
Well, we have the 6 researchers, which are Christy Sprague talking about weed control, Manny Singh and the work that he's done with Dennis on the precision planting and the seed placement, disease management with Marty Chilvers and Martin Nagelkirk. Dennis is going to do a special presentation on harvesting high quality grain. And I can let him talk a little bit more about that. I think that's going to be especially good because that came to him from the millers.
Yeah. So we got the program should be pretty well rounded. We're trying to focus it toward, what is our current research out in the field? What are we learning? But then also trying to wrap it up with, we are getting closer to harvest, so that harvesting quality grain is, something that's important to be talking about and thinking about at this point in this stage of the game. And then we also have an announcement to make as well at the end.
Oh, we'll cover that in just a minute. I'm real curious about the weather and how it's affected the plots. First of all, down at Michigan State. Now, haven't you received a little bit more water than other parts of the state?
Yeah, there are some places in the state that are much drier than others. If you look at the National Drought Monitor Index, all of Michigan is either extremely dry or in moderate drought right now. There is a chance of rain in the forecast almost each day this week because it's going to be so warm and humid. There's a chance of showers touching off, but that'll be quite random and variable. So some people might get a brief downpour and others might not get anything. But yeah, it is quite variable. And I've walked fields all over the state of Michigan, and there's some areas where they've got some timely rains and the wheat is looking really good. And there's some other areas where you can clearly see the water deficit is having an impact on yield right now. So It just really depends on where you are and whether you've had any of those timely rains or not. I was talking to a guy up in the Thumb who said he was trying to remember when we got at least a half an inch of rain or more. And he said, we've gotten a 1/4 inch here, 2/10 of an inch there, another 1/10 different times. But to get anything that was more than a half an inch, he said, I think it was before we planted oats back in March. So if you don't get more than a half an inch of rain in one rainfall, you can accumulate a deficit pretty darn quickly.
Well, and our crop was so advanced. I mean, when I took a look at the crop progress reports over the past few weeks, in most cases, over the 5-year average and over a year ago, we're talking in some cases almost 5 times the advancement this year versus what we've seen in the past.
So usually rainfall hinders spring work, which means, tillage operations, spraying, putting fertilizer on, and then planting, of course. But I think most growers would say this has been one of the best years for getting their crops in the ground in the spring that they've had in quite a long time, because the weather really has not hindered them hardly at all. Now that the crops are in the ground, certainly they need that rain to, most of the fields are germinated and emerged and up and growing, but boy, we are getting at the point where we really could use some rain to keep that crop going. And
now, was our head development ahead of schedule? So maybe this real dry weather, we weren't so dry when the head started to develop?
So with wheat specifically, we came out of the spring, it warmed up and stayed warm real early on in March and early April. And so we were probably about 2 weeks ahead of normal in terms of crop development. We started to advance through those growth stages on wheat very, very quickly. But then in mid-April came that cold spell that lasted even into early May. And boy, that really slowed up crop development. And so we went kind of almost back to normal. And then it finally warmed up middle of May. And now we're really accumulating some heat units here as well. But our flowering date is kind of a good judge of, how early or late are we. And this year, our flowering dates, the range is actually quite wider this year than what they were last year. The flowering occurred in a more narrow window last year, but this year we were started flowering probably in the 7 days to 10 days ahead of a year ago. So if the weather is similar to last year, that means harvest is going to be about a week earlier this year.
Did our wheat fields hold the moisture a little bit better because the wheat was so advanced, taller? The sun really didn't have a chance to dry that topsoil out?
So I've had a couple of growers talk to me about that, and what we're thinking is true is that with the dry weather we've had and getting the wheat crop planted on time in the fall, so we got good fall growth and good root development. I think we're going to see roots penetrate quite a bit deeper into the soil profile. And when that happens, the wheat crop is able to take up water much deeper in the soil profile than normal, which is good. That certainly is a benefit. And the timing of the drought, is also important, because head development or grain fill, after you reach the flowering point, water consumption by the crop is the highest at that stage of growth. And that's based on the temperature of the day, how much evapotranspiration the plant will take. On a day in the 70-degree temperature range, from 70 to 79, it'll use up about 0.19 inches of water per day. But if you, on that same day, same growth stage, the temperature is 80 to 89 degrees, it'll use 0.25 inches a day. So that's considerably more water that plant needs. And when you're not getting that much rainfall, you can accumulate a deficit pretty quickly with a week of 80-degree days, which is what we have in the forecast for this week.
Jody, I don't know if you have a garden or not, but I keep hearing from a lot of folks that the gardens are pretty demanding this year, especially they got to run the hose a lot more.
We certainly do. Hopefully this week will help get some of that caught up. And we also have hay to put up. So we always have that. Do you put it up early? Do you wait? What do you do? So yeah, Dad and I were just talking about the weather last night and what's the best plan. Because I don't like to do hay until after the field day is over, because that's kind of my big event for the summer. So we'll see how all that works.
That was going to be my question, and I'm glad you touched on it. Alfalfa. Hey, do you have any laying right now? Have you baled or harvested any yet?
We have not, and ours, we really just have my daughter's 4-H sheep and her pony left at the farm at this point. Although she tells me that's going to grow into other animals in the future. So we don't really need a whole lot of super high quality. We just have grass hay, but it will be time to cut as soon as we're done with the field day and we get a weather break.
We've got our first cutting hay up at home, but what I've seen driving around the country is alfalfa fields under irrigation. You don't normally see that, but I'm seeing these travelers where they can set up a pump and pump out of the river. And I've seen that quite a bit on more acres in alfalfa than I've ever seen before.
For the areas that don't have irrigation, they take that hay off. If we don't get some timely rains here pretty quick, there's not going to be much chance of second cutting, is there?
Yeah, or it'll be minimal at best. Yep.
Now that brings up a point, wheat harvest, because a lot of people do like to put clover in, or they have clover already in. What are you seeing right now with the cover crops, with the clover in wheat fields? What kind of catch do we have right now?
Every year, establishing clover as a cover crop is highly variable, depending on the crop and when you're able to get the seed spread and whatnot. By and large, I think most of the cover crops got seeded reasonably well this spring, and we got a good catch. But right now, I mean, you got to really go out and look down in that canopy for those little clover plants. And they're kind of short little spindly things because the wheat is so much taller than them. But they are out there, and they will, once you take that crop off and open up that canopy and let the light down in, it'll take right off and grow. The dryness may slow that back a bit, and we might not see quite as good a stand if we don't get some rain here pretty soon. But yeah, I wish more people would do the clover cover crop, because that's just a great system. It keeps the weeds down after you take the weed off, and it provides a green cover on the soil during the summertime or late summer.
One thing that I picked up off of the seminars that we had, the wheat webinars, was the spreading of the chaff, the straw, as the harvest was going on. First of all, how tall are a lot of our varieties now?
Well, so, one of the things at the field day that we're going to talk about, we have planted here at Mason what we call our heritage study, and we have some of the older varieties. We've got Augusta, Frankenmuth, Lowell. We got a bunch of our older varieties planted out here, and what is really cool to see is how tall they are compared to like Jupiter. We put Jupiter in as a kind of a more recent crop, and Jupiter is a cross between Ambassador and a New York line. And compared to Augusta, I mean, we got the two plots side by side. There's a huge difference in the height, probably 6 or 8 inches difference in height. So just the new varieties tend to be shorter than what they used to be. But early in the season, we thought that we were going to have really short wheat, and that was because we had such cold temperatures, and we had flag leaf come out, and then heads start to emerge, and it was pretty short. But the fields that didn't get the rain are still going to be a little bit shorter, but those that have had some timely rains, I've been in wheat waist high in our plots, and in 3 of the locations that we have.
What about disease pressures? Have we seen much?
Disease pressure overall has been really low because it's been so dry. You can find the occasional disease. The exception to that probably is powdery mildew. Powdery mildew is an early season disease. Typically you see that, when temperatures are below say 74 degrees Fahrenheit. It really prefers those mid to upper 60 temperatures. When it gets warmer, the disease just can't develop. But unlike other diseases really like to have the moisture. So a dense, wet canopy really promotes or favors development of like stripe rust and leaf rust. But powdery mildew prefers only like just the dew on it. If you have a heavy rain, it tends to wash it off and you don't have much development. We had extremely heavy powdery mildew pressure in a lot of fields this year, like we haven't seen in a long time. But that is pretty well kind of cured itself with the warmer temperatures that we've been having. So overall, I think the crop is in really pretty good shape from a disease perspective.
Now, in some of these areas where they did get adequate rain, I think when I had talked to you on the air on Friday on the farm program, you mentioned there were some spots in central Michigan that had upwards of 3 inches.
Yeah, over the last month, they've had 3 inches. If they add it all up together, that's a considerable amount. I mean, that's close to normal amount of rainfall for them during this season, which is great. You had to be in the right spot when them storms come across. The bands weren't always that big and very wide, and so if you happen to be lucky and get it, you count your blessings.
So if you were lucky and you got it, what else are you getting along with a halfway decent crop and then ample rain and then 90-degree heat and all this week high humidity?
Yeah, so in that case, maybe disease pressure could be a little bit higher. Most of those guys that I know up that way are putting fungicide on for flowering, which will help control diseases. And so I expect pretty good or very high yield potential. In fact, I think our Isabella State Yield Trial location, well, between that one and Lenawee, both of those have done really quite well. Lenawee has gotten some rainfall. They were very dry last fall. That southeast corner of Michigan was very dry last fall, very dry this spring. And finally, they started getting some rains that actually much of the rest of the state didn't get in April and May. So between those two locations, I think those will be our highest yielding state yield trial locations. And
now, as far as the field day, the virtual field day, Jody, let's kind of go down through the roster of the speakers, what they're going to be talking about, and a little bit of timing on this. Can you give us that information?
Sure, definitely. We're going to kick off right and early in the morning at 8 o'clock with you, Terry, to kind of get us pulled together and get us focused and get us on the right track. We're going to have a welcome from Brian Horgan, who is the new department chair of Michigan State of Plant, Soil, and Microbial Sciences. And then we're going to kick it right off with researchers. So we have several to go through. Growers said we don't want to be on for longer than 2 hours. 2 hours is our max. So each of the researchers has 15 minutes, which will include time for questions. So if folks have questions, they can either type them in, because you can also watch us on Facebook on Wednesday morning. They can type them in there, or we can also put them right in through the Zoom. So we want to make sure they're aware of that. If we do not get to all their questions, we will get to them through our e-newsletter. So if folks have not, they can go to miwheat.org, and down at the bottom, we just need your name and your email. That'll get you on the newsletter, and then you will get all of the information if we run out of time on Wednesday. So we're going to talk weeds with Christy, seed placement with Manny, Marty and Martin are going to talk about disease management, Dennis with a high quality grain. We're going to have Kurt Steinke and Lacey Thomas talk about grain and straw production. And then Eric Olson is going to talk to us about the new varieties he has on the horizon and what might work best on your farm. So I think it's going to be a really good, strong morning when we look at all of that production and all of that research and all of that basic information. And then towards the end, we are going to wrap it up with a big special announcement. Aren't we, Dennis? It's going to be awesome.
Yep.
And you can't tell me at all. I'm going to have to wait myself until close to 10 o'clock next Wednesday, right?
We can tell you that this is a project that, let's see, we've been testing and working on, and it is a big collaboration. And we are so excited because we feel like this is what's going to take growers into the future. This is something we were looking at and seeing if it made sense, got some feedback from some growers, and now we are full steam ahead. And it's not just us. It's a big collaborative project. We're looking at the long term, and we're really looking at working through research with growers and getting them the information they need to make the right decisions on their farm. I think growers are going to be ecstatic when they realize what those opportunities are. And we're going to launch pretty much full blown this fall. So Dennis is going to have his hands full. This is a big, big project.
And Dennis, I just got a funny feeling that if I let her talk long enough, she'll spill the beans, right?
Maybe.
I got a little thing written right up here on my computer screen, and that's all I'm going to say.
And of course, just before that announcement, or maybe after, we're going to have a chance to get those credits, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's going to be afterwards. And that will be through the survey, just as we did the Wheat Wisdom webinars. So you can get 2 RUP or 2 CCA credits. And if you want to get those, again, you have to participate via the Zoom, because that survey is linked to the Zoom. And we'll ask you the questions, make sure you have your codes, all that stuff with you. And you'll just go through, take the survey. And when you're done and submit it, your information will be put in the spreadsheet, and we will send it to the Department of Agriculture.
We never did have any problem getting participants during that wheat webinar. Dennis, any idea, any recollection of just how many people on average we were getting per session?
We have those numbers. I don't recall off the top of my head. Jody, do you remember?
In total, we hit well over 450 different people throughout all of them. We were in several different states, and I believe 5 or 6 different countries. So great support. And those actually are all on our website. If you go to miwheat.org and you can click on grow information and look at previous events, you can look at every event that we've ever done. All the information is up there. So it's not a one and done. It's once it's over, you can always go back and look and double check.
And that's the nice thing, quite frankly, about the virtual is if you do have any questions and some thoughts and say, gee, I remember that guy saying something about that, you can go right to miwheat.org and go back into the archives and find that particular session.
Yep.
You definitely can. Definitely can. And this year, we're actually adding another event after the virtual field day. We are adding a variety release virtual field day, which will be Wednesday afternoon. That's really geared at the seed industry, but we've worked for several years, the Michigan Wheat Program Board and MSU Technologies, to get to be part of the system to help when it comes to variety releases. With the hiring of Eric Olson as the wheat breeder, instead of having a variety to release every 4 or 5 years, Eric has 4 to 5 new varieties to release every single year. So it's been a process of how do we work together? How do we grow the pipeline? Because if the growers are funding it and there's good varieties out there, and when we look at the diversity, if you're dairy, you're looking at straw. If you're looking at special milling, properties, then you're looking at some of these other special varieties. We have some that have more disease resistance. There's some more geared toward organic. So as all these things come out, it's been very important to figure out how to let the seed industry know. So at 1:00 on Wednesday, we are doing because one's not enough, Terry, let's do 2. So we are going to do a second virtual field day in the afternoon, really looking at what Eric has that's available. And he and Dennis have been out there, they've walked, they have the videos, and all of that information will be available, as well as someone from MSU Technologies explaining what it takes to license a variety. So this all is really just the beginning, as we continue to grow this wheat industry, or maybe wheat empire in the state of Michigan. It's exciting.
Okay, Dennis, the big question, and I'm not going to ask you what you're going to disclose on Wednesday, but there are some folks that really want to know, when is the first field of wheat going to be harvested this year? Early, on time, and do you have a date in mind?
So I think down in the southern part of the state, that southern tier of counties, that's where harvest always starts. I think you could find or hear stories of guys rolling in there July 1st or 2nd.
And are they going to have any numbers issues this year?
Numbers as in like falling numbers or vomitoxin
Yes.
numbers?
Yes.
Yeah, so far, we'll see what the weather does here right now. We're still at risk for infection for Fusarium head blight. So those that did spray, I think, are going to be in good shape. This humidity and heat and moisture that we're going to have come or forecast for this week is perfect for head scab development. So those that got the fungicide on, I think, are going to be in good shape. And those that didn't may be in good shape, depending on how this next week or 10 days comes out.
I do recall, and this is back a few years ago, that a field of wheat not too far from my home came off on June the 30th.
Mm-hmm.
And the very next day, they no-tilled soybeans in that field.
Yep.
And a little late, but the soybeans averaged 35 bushel at that time when it was all said and done. I don't recall a lot of the weather factors. Don't have any idea on that. But that's about the earliest that I can remember seeing a field of wheat come off.
Yeah, I think in your area up there, you're looking at more like that 6th to 7th before combines really start rolling. It's just not quite as far along as what it is in the South, which makes sense. I mean, they've already started harvest down in Georgia, and they're going to be starting harvest in North Carolina here for long. And so it just progressively moves north. So, yeah, but I've had that question about double crop soybeans quite a bit here. Is this a year where we might be able to harvest early and get that second crop of soybeans in? And the biggest thing with whether that second crop of soybeans is going to be successful is if you have moisture for the seed to germinate and emerge. Because if that seed sits there for 2 or 3 weeks, it doesn't have enough moisture to germinate, you've lost your potential for harvesting early. You're right back to a normal year. So whether you get rainfall will have a big impact, probably the biggest single factor on whether that second crop soybean would be successful or not.
All right. So, Jody, again, for more information, miwheat.org. All the activity kicks off officially at 8 o'clock. I think we'll probably be kibitzing back and forth just a little bit before that, but I'm looking forward to it. This is going to be a really good field day, and I think by the sounds of it, you've got some great people lined up, and we're going to cover a lot of really important information. Short, sweet, and concise. I think that's what it's all about.
It is, and folks can still register. I'll be sending out the information today. I will also send more out tomorrow, and Wednesday morning about 7:30, I send it out to everyone all again. So if it's late, if you're not sure what you're doing, it's okay. Just really get registered by 7:30. Give me a little buffer, 7:20 Wednesday morning would be great, so I can pull that list and get it back out to everybody. But we will get you information. And with that comes a couple phone numbers. If people have trouble getting on, we will have some extension folks, Dennis and myself, available to help anybody that's having trouble. So there should be no technical issues that keep folks from participating.
Jody Pollock-Newsome, Dennis Pennington, we'll talk to you Wednesday morning. You guys have a great day. Stay cool, okay?
Sounds good. Thanks, Terry.
All right, talk to you all later. That's it. Talking wheat, and we'll talk a whole lot more wheat this coming Wednesday. I'm Terry Henney. Have yourself a great day and stay cool.